Right, well, I'm hoping that we are now live. Dwi'n gobeithio bod ni nawr yn fyw. Felly, noswaith dda iawn I chi gyd. Croeso cynnes iawn I chi yma yn rhithiol yn amlwg I fferm Dolygarn, Llanbadar Fynydd Powys, I yn fyw o'r fferm, a diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd am ymuno gyda ni heno. So good evening to you all, a very warm welcome to you all virtually here, obviously, to Dolygarn in Llanbadar Fynydd Powys, for the last in the series of the Demo Farm Lives. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So, although it might not be quite as good as an actual on-farm visit, unfortunately it's the best that we can offer considering the circumstances, but we will try our very best to give you an insight into Dolygarn as a demonstration farm and the project that we have ongoing here at the moment. Felly'n enw I Welland Davies, fi yw'r swyddog technegol cig coch ar gyfer De-ddwyrain Cymru ar gyfer cyswllt ffermio, a fi fydd yn treal yng ngorau glas i'ch arwain chi trwy gydol y noson heno. So my name is Ellan Davies, I'm the Red Meat Technical Officer for South East Wales with Farming Connect, and I will try my very best to guide you through this evening seamlessly, hopefully. Now this is a new way of working for us all, so fingers crossed that everything will go to plan this evening. Now we want this evening to be as interactive as possible, so please, if I can encourage you to ask any questions that you may have throughout the evening, we'll try and get them all answered for you. The majority of this evening will be in English, but you are more than welcome to ask any questions that you have in Welsh or English, and as I mentioned, we'll try to get them all answered to you before the end of the evening. So we are streaming on Zoom and Facebook Live as well. So if you're listening on Zoom, there is a chat box at the bottom of your screen where you can type your questions. If you're watching on Facebook Live, please comment your questions. And like I said before, we'll try and get them answered before the end of the show. So we're very lucky this evening to have a range of different expert speakers joining us virtually this evening, most of which have been working with us on the project here at Dolygarn that we will be concentrating and discussing throughout the evening. So joining us this evening will be Charlie Morgan, Grassmaster Limited, an independent grassland consultant and is the leading consultant on the project with us, a familiar name and face to most, if not all of you watching this evening, I'm sure. And next up we'll have Brady Whittle, a catchment officer with the Wyoness Foundation, who is also involved with the project here at Dolygarn. James Rogeri, then from Hubby Cig Cymru Meat Promotion Wales. James is an industry development executive with HCC, and he will be discussing a market update and project update for us. And last but not least, we'll have Natalie Chappelle. Natalie is a local development officer with Farming Connect for this area, for Radnor, and Natalie will close the meeting by giving us a quick overview of the Farming Connect services that are available. So now that I've got those introductions out the way, I've got one big introduction, the stars of the show left to introduce you. So we've got James Powell, his wife Rachel, and the three lovely boys in the middle here. So remind me again, which one's Harrison? And we've got Fraser, and we've got Caleb, I think, isn't it? Yeah, the naughty one in the middle there. So thank you very much for having us this evening. Like I said, it's a bit different to having an open day. But yeah, like we said, we'll hopefully give you an interesting evening nonetheless. So I'm sure some people watching might be familiar with you and the family and the farm, but for those that aren't familiar, James, can you just give us a bit of an insight about who farms here at Dolygarn?
Yeah, my name is James Powell. I farm here in partnership with my father and my uncle, both in their 80s, but still living on farm and relatively active. Yeah, our family came here in the 1930s as tenants on an estate. They had an option then to buy it in the 1960s, my father did. Yeah, and we've bought bits on from that. There's 265 acres of the home farm here, 160 acres across the road, and then we bought another 54 acres then later on, so it's about 480 acres all in all. It runs from 1,050 feet above sea level to just under 1,500 feet. We're well over 1,300 millimetres of rainfall in a year. There's sort of 3 land types you can break it down into. What we've got behind us here now where the yard is, just off the A483 is the River Eithon, the riverbed. It's relatively flat with river gravel underneath soil, and then we've got, which is the majority, consists of a silty loam above clay, which is quite a heavy land, a lot of rushes, hard land to farm, and then on top, coming up to about 1,500 feet, we've got the drier soils, that are above rock and burn.
So a true upland farm in its own right.
Yeah, well, it has its own challenges, but yeah.
And you're a beef and sheep farm, obviously. Do you want to give us a bit of an insight into the sheep enterprise of the farm? Yeah,
we lamb just over 1,000 sheep, including the hogs. We've got, as a base ewe, we run about 300 Welsh ewes, and we put an Aberfield on them. So then that obviously breeds our replacement ewe lambs. And then we keep them at the other farm that's a bit higher, and then we lamb then 650 to 700 Aberfield ewes. We try and keep them as compact as we can, run about the 70 kilos mark. We like the Aberfield, which is a muscular type of ewe that's a little, this hardy, just adds a different dimension to the Welsh, a bit more prolificacy. She's we put the Aber Black tup on them then, and it's a longer. We've got the muscular frame from the ewe that's compact, and then we try and get some length in through the Aber Blacks, and we just trialled Primeras last year, and I put Primeras and New Zealand Suffolks on about 100 hogs every year, just everything over 42 kilos. We've gone for the Aber Blacks. It's just a simple system that everything white has a chance of being retained for breeding, and then the terminal blacker lambs, they go for the carcasses, go for the terminal carcass.
Yeah, simple but effective system, I'd say.
Well, visually, simple, and the lambs grow. We weaned over 38 kilos weaning weights at 13 weeks, so.
Brilliant.
Okay.
And then, do you sell everything fat, or do you sell some stores, or what's your market?
We're on the Tesco cost of production contract at the moment. We're second year in now. We're on the tier 1. It's a goodish contract in that your cost of production. You've got to input a lot of data, but you do get that data back in benefits of of data that you can measure, and and the costs, and what actually it is costing you, which is easy to forget.
Yeah, definitely. And on the beef side of things, then, do you want to explain a little bit about your beef system?
Yes. We've got a small suckler herd of, it was 50 cows. We've gone down. It wouldn't be much. It's just less than 30 at the moment. We try and keep a compact cow. The Salers, they're a hardy breed. They keep their flesh. They seem to milk a lot. They're hardy. They calve easy. They calve at 2 years old. Which is you get more calves per cow. We sell the stores then. We sell the steers, the bulls. Sorry, we keep them as entire and sell them as stores at around about 8 to 9 months. And what we've been doing lately, we've been bulling the heifers and then selling them as in-calf heifers at around 15 to 18 months. Brilliant.
And you mentioned there that you're involved with the Tesco cost of production scheme. You're also part of the Grass Check GB project. How are you finding that?
It's about data. For those who don't understand, the Grass Check GB is around 100 farms, I think it is, from the British Isles. It originated from Northern Ireland a couple of years ago. This is our second growing season. So we start in April. We'll measure the grass with a plate meter. I'll measure the grass on the grazing platform once a week. Input that data then onto Agrinet, an Irish-based software firm, and yeah, and that gives us then all the data and all the information then that you can see where your grass is, and you can see how your grass is growing. It measures it week on week, and then it tells you how much it's grown in the last week, where the grass is in terms of where you next want to put the sheep, and it just gives you a history, and it gives you a bit of a future, and that you know where you can keep on rotating the sheep to, and also one of the best things about that as well is we also do a grass sample every 2 weeks. So I'll take a grass sample, send it off to the lab, and then that gets analysed. We get the data back within a few days, and then that will teach us then, that will tell me exactly where what quality is in that field, the next field that I'm going to turn the sheep onto, or cattle. And yes, you have that data then of the protein, and then, and that gives you good education then, in not guesswork. It's just the data of what the grass is, what quality it is throughout the season. Then to protect that, to utilise your April and May grasses fully, because that's when it's your 27% protein and and 12 or 13 ME, so it does give you the the data and the information there, so you can utilise it fully. And
like you said, it gets rid of the guesswork. You know exactly what grass you've got, what the quality is, and you know exactly what you're going into. Brilliant. So obviously the sheep and beef are the core of the farming business, but you've also diversified quite heavily on the farm as well. Do you want to mention what diversifications you've got on the farm?
Yeah, about 5 or 6 years ago we put in a 95 kilowatt biomass log boiler, heats the 2 houses and a workshop, utilising wood from hedging projects or windfalls, and around the farm. That's proved good with savings, renewables and saving on the heating. We've got solar panels. We've got a holiday cottage off the farm we've been doing for several years. That's proved successful. We've now, we're currently renovating another one to add to the portfolio, and and that acts as then a diverse income then, that it doesn't, it's not relying on the imports, exports of the red meat sector. We've also got an on-farm B&B pig finishing unit.
Brilliant. So just making sure that your eggs aren't all in one basket makes, like you said before, security definitely is important. So I think you'd make a very good Farming Connect ambassador, to be honest, James, because you've been on the Agri Academy, the both business and innovation and the rural leadership programs. You're also a Farming Connect mentor, which allows anybody that would want advice from you to have 15 hours of one-to-one time with you. You're also in a local discussion group and part of the Advanced Prosper from Pasture discussion group as well. So you've obviously made good use out of the Farming Connect services that are out there. Have you found them beneficial to your development as a person and as a business?
Yeah, definitely. It started off in 2013 was the first group I got involved with, the Agri Academy. Yeah, that was good. We travelled into Europe. Just the group of the the proactive, positive, progressive farming type that we could be kept in touch, speak on a regular basis, bounce ideas off back to front back, to and from each other from all over Wales, North, South Wales, everywhere around the country. And then like you said, the Profit from Pasture, the advanced groups. Again, input in grass measurements and just grazing strategies, and just on the platform to communicate with with people as just the, the social network as much as the the business aspect.
Getting like-minded people together, sharing ideas is more important than anything. Brilliant. And then so we've had a good insight into your business and how the farm is at the moment. So looking to the future, you're obviously a very proactive farmer. Have you got any aims for the business, or are you happy with how things are at the moment?
I don't know. We'll just
succession is obviously looking very strong at the moment. Are you interested in farming, boys? Yeah.
Well, we're going to take advantage of every situation that comes, isn't it, boys? I suppose. just like you said, the main word is be proactive, be ready to adapt, change with the times, and just roll with it, and just you know, we don't know what's coming with Brexit. We've been on about it for 4 years. It's coming, and that it will. You know, we need to have enough slack in the rope to just move around it and dance about it a bit. Just the proactive and just taking advantage of whatever comes.
Definitely. So I think that moves us on nicely to introduce you as a demonstration farm. So we first met last year in 2019 when the contract as a demonstration farm started, and you're in the programme for the next 2 years as well. So from that initial meeting we had last year, you were keen to look into projects to do with soil health and land-based projects rather than perhaps look at the livestock and performance side of things. Why were you so keen to look at the land-based projects?
Well, I don't know. I was lucky enough to get awarded a HCC scholarship in 2014. I went to New Zealand and Ireland, and my topic was hill development and land utilisation on more marginal lands. So and I just in New Zealand they're really starting with the soil biology and things like that, and you were they were looking at the well, first of all, everything starts with the soil, the microbiota within the soil. Like the world is only just waking up to what we're learning now about how about the microorganisms, and then the microbiomes. They'll feed the mycorrhizal fungi, that feeds the roots, and then that feeds into the plant, and then you start with the livestock. So I think a lot of us are focused on the livestock and things like that, whereas really we need to concentrate on the feed of the livestock, and then where that originates, and that's how to get the soil structure right and get the microbiomes within the soil activating and doing their job. So just maintaining soil structure and just starting at in the grassroots within in that soil.
And I think that leads us nicely on to introducing the main project and the main topic that we're here to discuss this evening, which is alternative forage options to improve productivity and reduce environmental impact on an upland farm. So what are you hoping to achieve from this project, or what are you hoping to get out from being involved with this project?
Well, one of the main words, I suppose, that revolves in the agriculture sector at the moment that seems to be, is a stick to hit. It seems to be the mainstream can seem to knock us with is the environmental word. But so basically, just the environmental impact that's going to be determining any sort of direct payment system in the near future. So by looking at the environmental impact, runoff and things like that, we're just looking at best practices with that. We've starts again with the soil structure. We've sort of more or less given up the plow here, because we tend to on our harder damper natured soils, we've tended to ploughed historically. The first winter, then you've got to be so delicate with it. We've knocked that soil structure. What I'm trying to say is, and then we've made it that sensitive for more compaction, which is the point in ploughing in the beginning, to relieve the compaction. We've create more compaction, more weed burden through disturbing the seeds, and we've created more compaction, I think. Soften the soils, and it doesn't get going enough then in this, quick enough in the spring. We need to get we've got the organic matter in the top of the soils. Some of our fields haven't been ploughed for many generations, so the organic matter's there. We've had it tested. Some of the organic organic matters in our soils is 16%. So if we can maintain that, show the public that we haven't got bare soils. We've always got stuff growing. We are utilising it. It's a win-win. That's the word at the moment that everyone seems to be using to the detrimental impact of farming. Well, that's what we really need to be shouting about, is that Nature never has bare soil, like it always grows something on it. So we need to make sure that we've got something growing on the soil all the time.
Yeah, perfect. And I think that leads us on nicely to our first speaker for this evening. Now, the first speaker for this evening, as I mentioned, is Charlie Morgan from Grassmaster Limited, an independent grassland consultant. Like I mentioned before, a familiar face and name to most, if not all of you watching. Now, Charlie is the leading consultant on this project, so he will be the best person to introduce you to the project, say what we have been doing, what we're hoping to be doing, and what our aim is for the next 2 years as a demonstration farm. So over to you, Charlie.
Good evening, Ellen and everybody. I was thoroughly enjoying that presentation, and James was doing a fantastic job. I've known James and Rachel for a number of years now, and it is a real pleasure that they are now a demo farm. And he said things that I'm going to say as well, and I just need to reiterate those things. I've worked from Farming Connect since it started, and one of the major questions that have always been asked is how can we reduce the winter costs? How can we reduce that cost of our livestock production, because it's a major impact on our business? And for some farmers now, they're reporting to me that their housing periods are in excess of 7 months. The success for many of these farmers has been growing an autumn-winter brassica type crop, maybe stubble turnips, rape, kale, hybrids, Swedes, and now there is a great interest in fodder beet, which is taking off in lots of places. But whatever the crop is going to be, it has to be something that suits the system, suits the farm, suits the environmental factors of the farm and its locality. And it has to be a sustainable option, not just an economic one. So the changing climate and the wetter, milder winters that we're having and the more erratic rain patterns that we're starting to see is making that farm planning far more difficult. It's making receiving options more difficult, and the uplands have their own suite of difficulties, as James was alluding to. And direct drilling has been a great benefit to us, not ploughing. But with the loss of some of the pesticides that are out there, we don't always get the success that we want. It's a bit limited. And these old matted grasses of the uplands are very difficult to drill into, very difficult to break down. So a break crop is still something that is beneficial to us to avoid, asking the question then how best to avoid the nutritional loss of those soils and the environmental impact that James is now suggesting is a far more concern, which is right to do so. And the type of break crop is important. We need this balanced approach between the business and the environment. And James has addressed his winter costs by sowing stubble turnips and rape in the past. It's helped him economically, but it has a limited field option that he has, poses high risk of runoff, and with a river at the bottom of the farm, as many of us have, then that is a high risk. So soil and nutrient loss is more common in this changing climate, and the losses can occur maybe during cultivation time, maybe during grazing time, or especially after the crop's been grazed out and finished. A stubble turnip crop could be finished by January. And if you think of that as an example, that soil is then bare, and it may in the uplands be bare and open to the elements until maybe May, before it started to be reseeded. So that economically is an expensive rent, effectively, to have an empty field and a high risk to soil loss. So as James has already mentioned, that soil needs to be covered much of the time. So the project that we've come up with is to evaluate, is there a better alternative to a break crop to suit Dolygarn? So we're comparing the Brassica Express mixture of turnip and rape that he has with a mixture called Clamp Saver, which is rape, Berseem clover or Egyptian clover, and Italian ryegrass mix. Now, that's sourced from his seed suppliers' field options, but of course there are many companies out there with similar versions. So forgive me when I talk about these. What has been done so far? Well, there are 11 acres of stubble turnips and rape mix, and there's 14 acres of the Clamp Saver, the Italian, the rape, and the Berseem clover, sown on adjacent fields. And the question we asked James, basically, or the questions, is when when is the crop needed? One of the most important things that you must ask. When are you going to utilise that crop? When is the field available for us to sow it? And what are you going to do with it? How are you going to utilise it? And James wanted the crop to finish tail end lambs and also keep ewes out for longer before their house for lambing. And again, the weather played its part in the time that we could sow it, and it turned extremely dry for a change in May this year and in the start of June. But the crops were sown successfully on the 9th and 10th of June. And after we'd sprayed off the field and had a total kill and tried to desiccate some of that thick mat, it received some manure. It wasn't ploughed, but this thick thatch had to be disked and then power harrowed once to try and break an opportunity to get the seed in. And the ground was really dry, and therefore it was really, really important, something that we sometimes overlook. It was really, really important to roll it well and capture the moisture present. And I think we've got a clip of James on the day of rolling now.
Rolling the Brassica Express. It's quite sort of spongy, but it's been terribly dry. It's the 10th of June. We drilled this yesterday, the Brassica Express, and over here front, this is the clamp saver, 14 acres of clamp saver. We only managed to get it in yesterday as it's been so dry. Yeah, so I'm rolling like mad now because it's rain imminent, and then it looks like it's going to be rain for a couple of weeks, but nice warm rain, so it should be quite welcome, but it's very cold. So yeah, 10th of June, rolling the clamp saver and the Brassica Express.
So you can see there the type of soil conditions we were trying to drill into, not ideally perfect, but everything did germinate pretty well. But with all those clods and such like, we did have a nice outbreak of flea beetle. So we identified that early, and that was sprayed with a cypermethrin on both the crops, and they were doing extremely well. And I visited again 35 days after sowing, and here are the clips of that to be seen now.
This is the Brassica Express, sown 35 days ago. It's now 15th of July. It's come a little patchy in the middle. This is the clamp saver. This was also direct drilled in the field next door to the Brassica Express. This was direct drilled same day, 10th of June. Take is a lot better on this one. This is red clover in it as well. Italian ryegrass, Brassica Express.
So just to correct James there, it's not red clover, it's Berseem clover. It's an Egyptian clover. So I went there on that day to collect some soil squares, basically to test some rain simulators. And the next clip of me testing the difference between the crops in terms of what the soil runoff and soil moisture holding capacity will be doing, is doing at that time. And we'll be doing this periodically over the grazing period and into next spring, and record any differences that are on the crop. So we're now going to look at the rain simulators, and once I've taken the soil out of the rain simulator and cutting it open to see what we've got. Simulators and the soil samples that we took from Dolygarn yesterday to see what impact rainfall has on the soil type and what holding capacity we got. There's a litre of water here which basically simulates a rain impact of 1 inch an hour, and it's just having a look to see what kind of runoff we could be expecting off these two systems. And you can see that the one that's got the grass, bursting clover and rape is having a much clearer front than the one that's just got the rape alone. We've got a bit of soil wash out of there, which is soil particles, phosphates and such like straight into the watercourses. Underneath we've had the water going down through, and if we remeasure these coming out the other end, then we'll probably find that a certain percentage of water has been retained within the soil. So it's kind of quickly demonstrating, even at this early stage of growth, the difference in terms of potential water runoff. Also worth noting the difference in soil. They're both being worked exactly the same, but the rooting potential of the grasses is quite significant. When you break into the structures, you see a bit of compaction present. Well, not much, but a little bit of water standing with the orange soils that are there, and no worm activity, even though it's been only disked and power harrowed. Whereas you look at the Berseem one, and you cut that one open, much tighter already, and a lot more worm activity. If you can see the worms in there, there they are. Take a look at the shadow. A lot more worm activity in there behind those leaves. Lot tighter sward. You see the sort of worm activity in here. So again, creating the right environment for water to penetrate down, all the system to work better. Quite a hard, you can hear the root structure already there, holding things together quite well. And again, good worm population. Right, so that was very interesting. Even at that early stage, there is a difference, and we're going to monitor the worm numbers. James has already mentioned mycorrhiza and bacteria and such like. Well, one of the ways that we can't see that, but one of the ones that we can see is the worm activity. So we will be recording worm numbers across the crops in the duration of the project, and I think Brady has already been doing some of that, and she may mention it later. You'll have noticed that there is a significantly more slope at Dolygarn and in Wales generally than what I was doing with the rain simulators. So that some of that runoff would be far in excess than that small demonstration was showing us. And what we also hope to put in is some capture barriers erected in the field to monitor any soil shift through that period of time. So how can we mitigate against some of this runoff risk? Field selection, multiple access points, grazing from the top, we've all heard it, electric fencing, buffer strips, to name but a few. But we very rarely talk about the choice of crop. And having a grass in a mixture is very important to anchor the soil, especially on the surface. We hear so much about species, all these different species and herbs helping us improve soil structure, and we're not arguing about that, that's true, but it has to suit the area. And when you've only got 8 inches of soil and maybe all these 4-feeted animals jumping all over it and the pounding rain that's coming down, the grass is going to be a major player in keeping everything in place. And if we take a look at the aerial footage now, then you'll see that everywhere is filled in well on the crops. And both crops have yielded very, very well, although a bit variable, as you can see. They've had no artificial fertilizer. And the access in this valley to many different types of manures, and they all need to be used wisely and calculated as to what we're putting in there. And last week I visited James, and we recorded the crop yields in kilos of dry matter per hectare, not something you can do with a plate meter. The crops, as I said, were a little bit variable, but variable between good and excellent. And the average yield for the clamp saver was between 4.5 and 5 tons of dry matter per hectare. And for the Brassica Express, it was 6 to 6.5 tonnes of dry matter per hectare. Now, there will be utilisation losses within that we'll have to calculate for, and there will be regrowth of the clamp saver. So in this clip, I'm explaining to James about what it is are in the mixes and why they're in the mixes and how we're going to set up the grazing along the way and how we're going to set it up in terms we have to graze it correctly. So James and myself are now discussing the grazing options and the methods of the crops. The energy for the livestock is in the stem and in the bulb of these plants, and the protein is in the leaves. So we have to graze these properly, and the sheep will be wasteful if we don't. They'll be chewing leaves and dropping them on the floor and wasting all that protein. Now, James has finished his lambs very, very well this season. He's done a real good job, and he's only got 550 left. So what we'll be doing is splitting these evenly across the two crops, and we'll be accounting for their weights. We'll weigh the lambs then every 2 to 3 weeks, and we can record the performance of each crop and get the kill sheets back. The lambs will be block grazed, not strip grazed, and they'll be moved somewhere between 3 and 6 days. We're going to have to adjust this as we learn as to what they're eating and how the system's going. A little bit longer if we can to save on labour, but in terms of loss of utilisation, that's why there's a balance between 3 and 6. Now, the electric fences, I'm told, arrived yesterday, so we can progress to the grazing period. And the clamp saver will also need to be back fenced, as the rape and the clover will regrow a couple of times, weather dependent, and of course the grass will regrow for the 2021 season and maybe longer. The area utilised will be recorded, and once the lambs are finished, James can then introduce ewes when he's ready into housing for lambing, depending on how much the crops are left, of course. Stocking rates and grazing days will be recorded, and the clamp saver then will be ready for the ewes and lambs at turnout and for the silage later on in that year, and possibly for another autumn of grazing. Whereas, of course, the Brassica Express will have expired sometime in the early part of the year, and we'll have to look to reseeding that. So during this time, we will record soil nutrient content, the crop yields from the clamp saver as it regrows. We'll try and record the soil losses, which is not the easiest of options, but we'll make an attempt. We use the rain simulators to demonstrate those differences. The crops will be sampled for their analysis, not just for their nutrient content, but also maybe their nitrates and their phosphates to see what they've picked up. And we'll continue this through until autumn 2021. Now, for the future, we would like to monitor the long-term grass mixes that follow. We'd like to choose grasses that are going to be more suitable for those upland areas, not 100% perennial ryegrasses, but grasses that are more suitable for those difficult conditions that James has described. And we'll want to obviously incorporate that information to calculate the economic differences between the two treatments. So we will have data showing us the economic benefits and the environmental considerations and hopefully benefits. Ellen, that's me done. Back to you.
Lovely. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Charlie. Thank you very much, Charlie. I hope that gives you all watching a good insight into the project, what we've done so far and what we're aiming to do as well. Like Charlie said, the project is still in its infancy. We're hoping to carry on with this project for the next 2 years for the demonstration, for the duration of Dolygarn's time as a demonstration farm. So we will keep you updated with any updates on the project throughout the next few years. So I would actually like to encourage you to ask any questions that you've got. We have had a few questions in already, so if I can ask James, we've had one question. How do you establish a root crop or grass seed without the plough?
What we've done in the past is, well, we obviously, first of all, we're going to kill the existing crop down to the root, so we put glyphosate. So we'll spray with glyphosate, and then about 5 days, leave 100 ml sort of uptake in the grass, you know, so there's 100 mil growth in the grass. Glyphosate goes down the leaf, down to the root. Uptake is better at that height. And then graze it heavily after 5 days. And then about 2 weeks after, well, 14 days after the glyphosate, we'll mostly go in with we have in the past done it with a direct drill, Vredo, Moors, and a combination drill. But this time, because there was a lot of thatch there, we disced it up. We've got a big set of like 3 meter, big like perforated sort of discs of the roller behind. We disced it up sometimes once or sometimes twice. It depends, just to break up that thatch, because obviously you've got a lot of that organic matter and the root structure and the dead grass is all gone in over the years, and so you've got to really get that seed to soil contact. So then, so glyphosate, disced it up once, maybe twice. We mucked this heavily, 7 ton of muck per acre. It needed it. Then we power harrowed and combination drilled the seed in. No chemical inputs on these 2 patches within the project, and and then let it go. Like Charlie said, that we did have a flea beetle problem at about, was it 2 or 3 weeks in? I forget now, but and address that with some cypermethrin, and then it grew.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think it was the touch and go during that dry period if we were gonna get it in time, but I think the rain just managed to.
We were late getting in, and after the discs, it was fluffy. I didn't think it would go, but rain was there, and so rain was coming, so we had to do it
just in time, I think, isn't it? Yeah, brilliant. And we've got another question as well, probably for you again, James. Would you consider the establishment of shelter belts and tree planting, A, to create a buffer zone alongside watercourses to alleviate runoff into water channels, and B, to increase shelter for livestock that could reduce housing period during winter as well?
We have. The Wyoness Foundation have been by and fenced off the river. We were lucky enough I think it was 2017. So the Eithyn has got a good bit of vegetation and the trees, there's a buffer zone. So that has been done. We've got a lot of shelter belts because being quite exposed as we are in the uplands here, we've taken advantage, or not me, but my father took advantage of the grants and all the benefits that planting shelter belts in the 60s and 70s provided. So we've done all that. That has enabled us then to lamb outside. We've moved away from indoor lambing. So then again, not only housing in winter, but that enables us to lamb outside in April, sheltered in a sheltered environment. And we've planted 25 acres, just 25 and something thousand trees then in 2018 on some of our more challenging topography on the banks and things like that. So that again provides shelter. Better eliminates the wintering costs and provides shades for the livestock.
Bit of a win-win situation, hopefully, for both matters. Brilliant. I think we'll leave the questions there for now, and we will move on to our next speaker for this evening. So next up is Brady Whittle from the Wyoness Foundation. Now, Brady is a catchment officer, catchment advisor with the Wyoness Foundation, working with farmers in this catchment area on a sustainable management scheme project that James is a part of as well, which Brady will discuss more about now. So over to you, Brady. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ellen. So it's really lovely to be involved in this project at Dolygarn and to have the opportunity to talk to so many of you this evening. As Ellen said, I work as a catchment advisor for the Wyoness Foundation. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do before I go into the project at Dolygarn. So we're a rivers trust, and we're working to restore and protect the health of our rivers for future generations. And the most valuable tool that we have for doing this is the work that we do together with the farmers. You manage the land that drains to our rivers, and without your help and support, we can't achieve what we want to achieve. The brilliant thing about the work that we do on farms is that everyone benefits. We can make small changes on farms, which across a whole catchment add up to a really big difference. And happily, the changes that benefit the river also benefit the farm. And I'm hoping that this will be demonstrated at Dolygarn with the Alternative Forage Options project. So to briefly explain the kind of things that we do, in this slide here, I'm going to talk about some of these things. We started 25 years ago fencing watercourses and doing work in the rivers to improve the habitat. We've fenced long stretches of the Eithne and some of its tributaries and are known for doing this, but over the years our work with farmers has become more important and central to what we do. And now we have a team of advisors working on projects around the catchment. Most of them, unfortunately, seem to work in Herefordshire because there's just more grant money in Herefordshire for some reason. But there are more. There are increasingly projects this side of the border as well, and I'll tell you a bit about the one that I'm doing in the Upper Eithne catchment at the end of this presentation. So as a catchment advisor, my job is to work with farmers to encourage and support changes on the farm that benefit the river. And often we have access to grant that we can use to support these changes. To give you a few examples, on our wish list for farms is just looking at this slide here, and there are more, but this is the wish list, the top of the wish list: fencing watercourses and providing an alternative water supply to keep stock out of the rivers and protect the banks from erosion, clean and dirty water separation, gutters, downpipes, cross drains, or any improvements on the yard that reduce pollution risks. Healthy soils protected by healthy crops. So anything that we can do to help keep your soil healthy and protect it from erosion. So in Herefordshire, this might be cover crops or undersowing maize. We have an undersowing maize project underway. Whereas in Wales, our focus is more on grazing management to avoid overgrazing and compaction by stock and protecting soils under winter grazed brassicas, which is what's led to my involvement in this project. So that's enough about us. Sorry, I'm just moving through the slides. So, sorry, here we go. So, Dolygarn sits near the top of the River Eithne catchment. So he's Dolygarn. James is just up here, if you can see this, under the red star. It's the River Eithne is one of the three main tributaries to the River Wye. It's a triple SI and a designated special area of conservation because of its valuable habitat. Salmon swim hundreds of miles upstream to lay their eggs here at the top of the catchment because they need the clean, shallow water and coarse, silt-free gravel. And this is a particularly lovely stretch here with good numbers of juvenile salmon. Whenever we visit farms, we always like to have a poke about in the streams and rivers and see what invertebrates we can find. This is what the juvenile fish need for food, and the number and variety of species gives us a good indication of the health of the river. This is James and I having a look in the river. I always try and find a case Caddisfly larvae to show people because they're brilliant. They make houses out of the material they find on the riverbed, and you might think you're looking at a twig or a bit of gravel, but then a little head appears. So it's not difficult to imagine why I get excited about poking around in the rivers, but why should I get so excited about poking around in the soil? Well, it's no secret that soil in rivers isn't great. A healthy, well-structured soil will do a brilliant job of filtering the water before it reaches the streams and rivers, whereas a soil that's left bare or compacted can wash off the fields into the watercourses. And the reason that we don't want to see soil in the rivers is because it covers the gravel beds that the fish need for spawning, and because it takes nutrients along with it, particularly phosphates, which bind tightly to the soil particles. And this flush of nutrients into the rivers can cause an explosion of plant growth, which uses up the oxygen in the water, which can be disastrous for everything else that's living there. So it's in our interest, and most definitely in yours too, to make sure that the soil and nutrients stay on the field. To try and support farmers to do this, we can provide an erosion risk map of the farm. So that's what we're looking at here in this slide. I haven't got a pointer, but the fields that have the Brassica Express, the fields with the Brassica Express and the clamp saver are right on the bottom down here, on the bottom part of that map. So these risk maps are based on rainfall, topography and connectivity to water. And it shows where you might see runoff and erosion in a high risk scenario. So in other words, if the whole farm was cultivated and put into stubble turnips or fodder beet or maize, or if grassland is badly compacted, the red lines on that map might be where you see water running off and possible erosion channels. So those fields that we've got with the Brassica Express and the clamp saver aren't high risk fields, but there is an element of risk there. You can see the blue lines and a bit of yellow in the first field and in the top field. And that's where runoff can be generated. So the reason that they haven't come up as high risk is because there's no connectivity to a watercourse immediately next to those fields. But they are long slopes, so there is an element of risk there. So we provide these maps to farmers in the hope that they might use them when they're selecting fields for cultivating or planting high risk crops such as stubble turnips. But in practice, as we can see from this map, it's not always easy to find a low risk field on a Redmondshire farm. So alongside these maps, we recommend measures to reduce erosion risk whilst grazing brassicas. And Charlie's already touched on all of these, so I don't feel like I need to talk about them anymore, really. So the third on the list is minimising cultivations to protect soil structure. So direct drilling is great. Reducing or avoiding the plough and reducing the cultivations will help keep a stable structure in your soil. Power harrowing particularly leaves soil, ploughing and power harrowing leaves soil particularly vulnerable to compaction and erosion. The last thing on that list is something that Charlie, I know, has suggested, which is leaving grass headlands for supplementary feeding and run back as a run back area, and putting the bales out, if you're going to supplementary feed the livestock, putting the bales out in the summer to avoid compaction from farm vehicles during the grazing period during the winter. And the golden rule is to keep roots and shoots in the ground to protect the soil, which is why we are very interested in what's going on at Dolygarn with this comparison between the clamp saver and the Brassica Express. So just looking for a second at the soils at Dolygarn. So the picture on the left shows the clamp saver, where the soil surface is protected by the grass and the root density below the ground protects against compaction. I did 5 soil assessments across both fields, and the roots were going down almost to the bottom of the soil spit, which is about 11 inches in the clamp saver. Whereas the Brassica Express, you can see in that photo, the root depth is about 6 or 7 inches, and then the soil fractured below that rooting depth. So that the clamp saver soil has a degree of protection from all of that root matter in the soil. I also did some infiltration testing and some worm counts. So I found an average of 24 worms in the soil under the clamp saver with the grass and the Berseem clover, and an average of 12 worms in the other crop. So that's twice as many worms in the clamp saver. And infiltration rates, this is interesting. This is what Charlie was talking about with his rainfall simulator. The water went very quickly into the soil under the Brassica Express. And while water filtering in quick is better than it sitting on the surface, because that's what leads to runoff, it's still not ideal. What we really want to see is the water filtering in and being held within the soil pores and being stored there to benefit your crop. And as a bonus, also contribute to natural flood management. The more water that we can hold back in the landscape, in the farmed landscape, the lower the risk of flooding down in Bilth. So I should just point out, sorry, that this wasn't scientifically robust data gathering, but it would be an interesting area for further research, particularly the infiltration rates. So just finally, as Ella mentioned, I've been doing a project in this area, so in the upper Iton catchment, And it's a Welsh Government funded sustainable management scheme. This is what led me to James's door back in January, when I found out about this project, the Farming Connect demonstration project. So the Sustainable Management Scheme projects are funded by Welsh Government, and they aim to deliver actions that improve natural resources to benefit farms, rural businesses and rural communities. So our project is looking at ecosystems services provided by farms, and I can come and talk to you about the things that you have on your farm that you probably don't even think about, like the carbon stored in your lovely grassland soils. I can do soil testing and talk about soil structure, and I can provide a report telling you about the ecosystem services that you already have, and the kind of things, the ways in which you might be able to improve or extend them. So if I haven't provided my contact details in this talk, but I think they're accessible through Farming Connect. So if you are in the Upper Iton catchment and I haven't already visited you, I would love to, so please get in touch. Okay, thank you very much.
Brilliant. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Brady. Thank you very much, Brady. Obviously a very worthwhile and interesting project, and a good opportunity to work with the local farmers in this catchment area as well. So James, obviously you had a look in the rivers, the river that runs through the farm. Did you find anything interesting?
Yeah, those little fellas that hide in the things were quite interesting. I was trying to explain to the boys afterwards about them. But yeah, no, 3 or 4 weeks ago, Wyoness also sent out a couple of ecologists, and we were looking, we would like, what do you call it, the fish test or something, or they were like electrifying a section of water and then put it into a bucket. They'd have a 5-minute test, just to stun the fish and then just count them out. Yeah, there was countless little, you know, the bullheads and yeah, there was actually 49, you know, good fledgling young salmon, you know, caught within 5 minutes. So, and that was just in the ford here. So, you know, it's fascinating to see that then they'll be going off to the big seas and then coming back and laying their eggs in 2 years. Yeah, and it's, yeah, good stuff from them. So, yeah, there's obviously life in the rivers, and yeah, you know, and we had, like they said, for the Wyoness Foundation, we had an organic matter test and found, you know, 16% organic matter in the soils, which is, you know, there's excuse me, there's farms in America that are, you know, struggling, very, very famous farms in the Dust Bowls in America, and they're struggling to get from, you know, 3, and they've been at it 3%, and they've been at it for 10 years, and then they get up to 6%, and yet we've got, you know, 16% in our soils up here that have, you know, and so to be fair, like that, you know, we are holding you know, a lot of carbon in the uplands here, and I think we need to get the public and the consumers, you know, to know about what we are doing.
Yeah, definitely something to shout about, and I think it's definitely good that you're getting the boys interested in all aspects of farming and the environment as well. So I think that's definitely a good thing. So you mentioned this soil testing, and Brady mentioned soil testing as well. So just to mention quickly that Farming Connect can offer soil testing on your farms if you are registered with Farming Connect through the advisory service. It allows you to get up to 20 fields sampled and a nutrient management plan generated on the back of those soil sample results. So please do get in touch with your local development officer or the service centre at Farming Connect, and we'll be sure to help you in the right direction. So I think now we will move on to our next speaker for this evening. Next up we have James Rogeri, who is an Industry Development Executive at Hybiki Cymru and Meat Promotion Wales. So James will just give us a brief overview of how the red meat market is looking at the moment, and a quick update on the industry development projects that they have on the go too. So over to you, James. Thank you very much.
Hi there, everybody. I will do my best to make my way through this presentation as smoothly as I can. I must admit, I'm a bit of a I'm trying to use technology that I've never used before, but I will do my best and see if I can make everything work. So yeah, so it's obviously a very good time to come and speak to you at the moment. We're going through a period of very strong prices in the lamb market. Certainly, there's some very promising signs there, not just obviously at the moment, but for the future, in terms of we're going through a very difficult marketing period, obviously with COVID. However, we are still managing to get good prices. So there's definitely promising signs there that there's a lot more lamb obviously being eaten in people's homes, which has to be a positive going forward. Hopefully, as restaurants open up as well, that will be another avenue. But yeah, as you can see, over the last couple of months, lamb prices have tracked well above last year's prices and well above the 5-year average. So very, very positive signs at the moment. Sorry if I can keep this working. So yeah, so if we look then over the last month in August, slaughterings were down slightly, and also carcass weights were down only a very small amount, which means production overall has come down by 2% compared to the same period last year, and I think it's more important, probably, instead of looking at the last month, if we look throughout the year, and we see that production figures are actually down quite a lot. We're down about 3.7%, and that clearly will have had an impact on the marketplace, as if you can keep demand stable and supply goes down, you do tend to see an increase in prices. And it is difficult because, again, we're comparing to last year, and last year was a very difficult year in terms of the lamb market. There was a lot of fear around regarding Brexit, and was there going to be a deal? We're actually in a similar position now. We actually don't know fully what's going to be happening after December, but we tended to see there was a lot of lamb sold before Christmas last year. Whether farmers will do the same again this year, it remains to be seen. But certainly in the first 8 months of the year, less lambs have come onto the market. They've been marketed at slightly lower weights. Again, probably some of that is price driven. You tend to find when prices are high, then farmers are happy to market their lambs slightly lighter because they know that they're getting. A lot of the work that I do is also around cost of production, and I would sort of ask people to not forget about that. It's sometimes in years when you see prices are very high, we can get a little bit carried away. We've seen some of the breeding new sales have been absolutely fantastic if you're selling them. The prices have been really, really high, but you have to remember that it is about the difference between the price that you receive for the lamb and the price that it cost you to produce it. It'll be easy in a year when prices have been high if we've kept our cost of production down, so we're actually more profitable. So there was just a little bit of a word of caution there, but in general, the lamb market is very strong at the moment. Moving on to the cattle figures. Oh, sorry. Again, very, very strong for the cattle market is good. I guess there's a big strong argument to say it's about time. We went through a very, very testing time in terms of prices last year. We're round about 46 pence up on prices from this time last year. But we're still only getting back to where we were in 2018. But it is above the 5-year average, so it's promising signs. And if we look, what's also promising about this is that hopefully if I can slide my clicker thing working, we've actually seen production increase slightly. That's just over the last month. You can see production's been up almost 1%. However, if we look at it for the year to date, then actually production is up almost 2%, 1.9% there. So we've produced more and we've received a better price for it. So demand has clearly increased in comparison to supply. Some of that will have been on the back of it's been difficult for exports to come into this country. It probably means that we've served our own market more with the cattle this time. So that's got to be promising going forward. Again, we will see what happens with Brexit trade deals. It could be a different landscape next year, but at the moment the signs are obviously very promising. Just moving on now, just a quick plug to some of the publications out there, those that really like the market and understand what's going on. There's the market bulletin that we produce. I would point you towards that on our website. The Little Book of Me Facts is also very popular, and please keep up to date with us on Twitter and Facebook. I also said that I would just quickly mention a few projects that we're involved with. Grass Check GP, I think James mentioned it a little earlier. So that's around, I think there's around 50 farmers across Great Britain, sheep and dairy farmers measuring, providing data. It's an absolutely fantastic website. If you type in Grass Check GP, GB, you'll be able to go on there and see all the data that is being produced, and it really is fascinating. So I would advise anybody to go on and have a look at that, and hopefully we can use this data going forward to try and increase grass growth as much as possible, and learn from we've got. Right, sorry, if I can move the slide on. So there's also the red meat development projects that we've got on the go. There's 3 of them. We've got the Hill Ram scheme that is headed by Gwawr Parry. The project is looking to increase performance recording in hill sheep. We've got a number of flocks on board now. There's a lot of performance recording going on, which is brilliant to see. Just a quick plug: there's a sale in tomorrow involving some of the farmers that are involved within the project. I think that they're called Pro Hill Rams, and they're selling them tomorrow in Aberystwyth. Definitely worth a look if you're looking for performance recorded hill genetics. If we then move on, we've got the Stock Plus project. This is involved getting farmers involved in producing animal health plans, and not only just producing them but actually making them work on farm. So we've got farms all across now. I think the original target was to try and get 500 farms on board, and I think that they're getting towards that. And it's been challenging because obviously with COVID it's been difficult to get out on farms, but I know they've carried on with the work as best as they can remotely, and there are vets going out on farms getting these health plans up and running. So the project is definitely moving on, and it's very successful at the moment. And then finally we have the meat eating quality project, which is headed by Eleri Thomas, and it's been a bit more challenging to over the last few months with COVID to keep this going. But in the first year there was a lot of taste testing that went on. There were samples taken from abattoirs across Wales. We then back at in the beginning of the year, there was data collected in taste panel sessions. That data is now being analysed, and we are hoping to start the next round of tasting, well, as soon as we can get things up and running. So the project is still very much running. We just need to be able to get out there and put lamb in front of people so that they can give us their feedback. And I think that concludes my presentation for this evening. Any questions at all, please always feel free to get in touch with me at any time. And obviously any that have been put forward to Ellen now, I'm happy to answer. So thank you.
Brilliant. Diolch yn fawr iawn, James. Thank you very much, James. Obviously got a lot of interesting projects on the go, and thank you very much for the update on how the market is looking as well. So now we're moving into a bit of a question and answer session. So if it's possible to have the speakers back up on the screen, and we do have a few questions for the different speakers, so I'll aim the specific questions at the specific person. So we've got a question for Charlie. So what would happen to minimum tillage in the uplands if glyphosate is or will be banned?
Well, that's an excellent question. It'll be very, very concerning as to the success rate. Obviously, organic farmers can't do this at the present moment in time, and with some very, very aggressive grazing, it does give us opportunity with the right type of machine, with a disc type machine, to direct drill. But the type of grasses or crops that we're having to drill into that area might not be suitable for long term. You know, they're more hybrids and texture-ply grasses that have got bigger seed, that are more aggressive to withstand competition. It's a lot more difficult to get that sort of timothy or late-heading diploid ryegrass to survive under that pressure. So I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it'd be very, very challenging.
Let's hope it won't come to that for a bit, but yeah, it might be a possibility. So thank you very much for that question. Can I just encourage you to ask any questions that you have? We've got a few minutes left for the evening, so we will try and get through any questions that you have before the end of the evening. We've got a question for Brady. Somebody saying here that they're seeing a lot of otters near the river, not too far from this catchment area. Are you seeing the otters being a problem on the fish and the population in the rivers?
I'm not the freshwater ecologist. I don't know a huge amount about otters, but I would say that a good number of otters suggests a good number of fish. So I think that's probably a very good thing. I haven't heard that otters are a problem. I think we should enjoy them.
Brilliant. Sorry, we put you on the spot there discussing the otters. Thank you very much, Brady, for your answer. And then we've got a question for James. If we can get James back on the screen. James HCC, not James Powell. Do you have an average age at slaughter figure and the trend?
I don't actually have that to hand, but I suppose that it's not something that would actually be monitored. We don't. What we can look at is new season lambs and the rate in which they come forward. We wouldn't know their date of birth to actually be able to work out when they were born, to know days to slaughter. But I think what you tend to find is in years where prices are very, very strong, like they have been this year, there's been an encouragement to get lambs out there earlier to try and catch those market prices. So I would suspect this year we're probably seeing come forward a little younger potentially. But in terms of actually collecting that data, it's not something that would actually be collected.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, James. And another question directed towards yourself. What is HCC's policy on Brexit?
Yeah, very. I suppose a very good question. Obviously, from a HCC point of view, we want as many markets open to us as possible. We're not a lobbying body, so we only really provide data for policymakers, and we strongly want to encourage, obviously, the politicians to make sure that we have access to all these markets. Europe is huge for us. There's no two ways about it. So we need that unfettered access if we're going to sustain the markets that we have at the moment. So yeah, I'm sorry if I haven't answered your question there really, but our policy is, please give us access to all the markets possible, really.
And we've got another comment just on the earlier question about the average age at slaughter figure and the trend. The question was regarding beef. Sorry, James, not lamb.
Oh, sorry. Okie doke. Sorry about that. Yeah, that I don't have the data in front of me now. I'm sat here at my kitchen table, but yes, we would have that data. And if there's somebody that requires it, then please feel free to get in touch with me, and I will try and get that data for you. In general terms, from the analysis that I've done over the last few years working with HEC, we are still unfortunately seeing a lot of cattle killed at 29 months of age, just prior to the 30-month cutoff. I think in terms of cost of production, we've got to somehow get the age down. It's difficult, and I appreciate that, but we've got to find a way, not only for cost of production, but also for the environment, to try and get cattle off farm quicker. We don't really want passengers hanging around on our farms in Wales. So it's definitely something that we would like to see getting animals matured quicker, finished quicker, so that not only can farmers hopefully make more money from them, but also we're going to be doing our little bit for the environment as well.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, James. Thank you very much. So just in the interest of time, I think we will move on to our final speaker for this evening, who is Natalie Chappelle. So Natalie is the Local Development Officer for this area, for Radnor. Farming Connect actually have 18 local development officer all over Wales. They would be your first point of call for any questions you may have regarding anything to do with Farming Connect. So if you're not in touch with them already, I'd encourage you to get in touch with them. They are the people in the know and know everything about the Farming Connect services, so please do get in touch. So Natalie's just going to cover a few of the relevant Farming Connect services that we have on the go at the moment. So over to you, Natalie. Thank you very much. Diolch.
Thanks, Ellen, and thank you, James. It's a real pleasure to kind of get to work with both of you, and particularly to have such a high calibre farmer that we're working with in Radnorshire. So thank you very much. So in terms of what's going on with the Farming Connect programme currently, we're running quite a lot of surgeries, particularly within this COVID period. They've been very reactive surgeries, so they can be anything from woodland to marketing, diversification, business planning, animal health, and covering pretty much any range of subject you're looking at. So they've been primarily digitally or over the phone, depending on the farmer's requirements, but that's an hour of free time with a consultant. So if you've got anything that you'd like a little bit more information with, that little bit of quality information with the consultant, I kind of urge you to kind of contact your local development officer and kind of have a go at one of those surgeries. From there, as Ellen mentioned earlier, we have an incredible advisory service within Farming Connect. So some of the services we can provide are the nutrient management plans. So for a group, that's 20 free soil samples, or for an individual, that's 80% funded. So within that, you'll have a consultant like the likes of Charlie Morgan or other high caliber consultants in the area that will kind of take the soil samples for you, analyse them, and really kind of and provide you with a detailed plan going forward how to utilise those nutrients on the farm. So that's something I think as Welsh farmers we've got a responsibility to start to really understand what we do have on our farms, on our soils, and how to use it. So that's one of the options. We've also got muck management plans, livestock performance, diversification opportunities. So there's a really great range of services available. So again, just please speak to your development officer and take those opportunities. They're there for the taking, so let's try and take them. From there, we're currently, we've just opened a training window, and that's going to be open till the end of October. So it's a little bit more complex now with COVID, so I'd urge you to kind of get in touch with your development officers and training providers earlier, so you have an opportunity to go through the application process from there. But we've got a huge range of courses available to you, and most of those are 80% funded courses. So that could be anything from poultry to hedge laying, to machine shearing, and chainsaws, and bikes. So that could be anything. So I really would again urge you to kind of take those opportunities that are available to you. Within that same spectrum, we have a huge number of e-learning courses. They're courses you can sit at home on your computers and have a real detailed look at courses. I know for my own farming, kind of completed 20 courses last year, and they were on a range of subjects, and I think I learned something really fantastic of each and every one. So that's something you can do from the comfort of your own home and really kind of add to your farming knowledge on really specialised subjects. There's also kind of clinics available at the moment, whether that's FEC or anything else really. And as I say, we come back to the local development officers. There's 18 of us. We're available for Pan Wales. You can get us all on the phone, on the email. Please just get in contact with us. Whatever your needs are for your business, we're happy to talk through them with you and kind of point you in the right direction. So please get in contact with each of us, introduce yourselves, and we can really go from there. As Ellen mentioned before, James has been a fantastic utilisation of the programme, and there's so much to gain from the programme, so take every opportunity you have. Again, farm liaison services available to you as well. And thank you very much. Please contact the service centre or ourselves for any additional information, and thank you to Ellen and to James.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Natalie. Thank you very much, Natalie. Obviously, there's a lot of services out there that you could take advantage of, so I would really encourage you to take advantage of them. That's just a few of the services that Natalie's covered. There's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes as well. So like Natalie mentioned, please do get in touch with your local development officer or the service centre or any Farming Connect staff, and we will be more than happy to point you in the right direction. So we've had a few more questions in. We'll just cover off quickly before we bring the meeting to a close. So there's one here for you, James. Has GrassCheck GB helped you to manage finishing cattle quicker?
Well, on the farming we don't finish. I find that the soils are too heavy to finish any cattle, but yeah, it's just an insight on when you can put cattle on. It just puts a number on the. It's okay doing it by eye, but you put the like 2,500 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. You know that, and you know that is what you've got the cattle to go into. It actually puts a number in rather than saying. So in that respect, whilst they're on the cow in the summer, yes, the problem we've got is that the winters are so long, so that, they're not out long enough, and the soils get poached if we keep them out too long. So they're I'm afraid like housing is something that is why we've reduced the numbers in the cows, is because the housing is just so long. A 180-day winter housed is a long time, and just to protect increased costs and labour, diesel, metal, concrete, everything that cattle in the houses, cattle housed in the winter, entails. So, but yes, it's a management tool, and it puts that data into figures, as when to take them on, when to take them off, and to know what's ahead of you in that respect. Yes, not for finishing, but for the management of them. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, James. And I think we've got a few minutes to squeeze in a few more questions. I think we've got one for Charlie here, if Charlie is still with us. There's a question asking, is Clamp Saver a specific forage mix from a specific seed supplier, or is it a generic term?
No, it's a specific mix through the seed company that James buys his seed from. So it's from a company called Field Options. But as I said in my presentation, there will be similar ones out there. Obviously, Italian raygrass, everybody's got. Rape, everybody's got. And I'm sure they've all got a selection of clovers. So it's the variety type, the varieties. You need to go and have a look at your variety lists and see how they perform and make your selection via that.
Diolch, Charlie, thank you. And we've got one question for James Rogeri, if James is still with us as well. Is the increased age due to an increase in dairy cross beef into the market?
To answer that directly, I don't think it's totally down to that, because there's a lot of dairy cross cattle that are finished actually very quickly. So to answer the question directly, then no, it wouldn't be down to that. I just think from my own experience of what we see on farms, that there's a little bit too much of a store period that goes on, so that we basically just keep the cattle, what you'll hear a lot of people talk about, frame, and it just tends to be a very inefficient period, and somehow we've got to find a way of getting cattle to grow to the size that we want, whilst also doing it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. That can be done by dairy cross cattle. It can also be done by suckler bred cattle. So no, it's not down to dairy genetics, I wouldn't have said.
Thank you very much, James. Diolch. So it is nearing the 9 o'clock mark, so we will try to bring the evening to a close. So first of all, I'd like to thank our speakers for this evening, Charlie Morgan, Brady Whittle, James Rogeri and Natalie Chappelle. Thank you very much for your interesting presentations. I'd like to thank you all that have taken the time to tune in this evening and to watch and to ask your questions, and yeah, to make it the interactive webinar we were hoping for. So thank you very much for your presence. And last but definitely not least, I'd like to thank James and Harrison. I think 3 of them have gone to bed, but we've still got 2 men standing. But thank you very much for having us on farm and for all your hard work as a demonstration farm. And we look forward to seeing what the next 2 years has in store for us, project-wise and as a demonstration farm. Fingers crossed we will be able to be back on farm next year for an on-farm meeting, all being well, but we'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, if you are looking for any project updates or developments, please keep an eye on the Farming Connect website for regular updates, as well as the bi-monthly Farming Connect technical publication as well for any updates during that period. So the webinar this evening has been recorded, so if you have missed anything or want to watch back again, it will be available on the Farming Connect website to view at a later time. It should be available within a week or so on the Farming Connect website under the tabs Recent Webinars. There will also be an evaluation form when this meeting comes to a close, so we would really appreciate it if you could take 2 minutes of your time just to complete that evaluation form. Give us your feedback, let us know what you thought, and we can improve for future webinars. And I think that's all I have to say. I'd like to close the meeting by saying, once again, thank you very much for listening and good night. Nos da. Diolch yn fawr iawn.